So today I wanted to talk about a concept in meditation and spiritual path that is not very often talked about, and it can play a major role in your progress. And it's called um, ego's pullback. Now, if you go on internet and research meditation, there's a lot of information online, but this is something that is rarely spoken of. And it's very important that we discuss it today. And the reason why I wanted to talk about it is because today's, I think, the 3rd of January, and I came back on the 12th of December back home, and I really had a difficult time being here. 1 week out of the 3 weeks that I've been back, roughly 1 week I was sick. I had a very bad cold, but the other 2 weeks I really struggled. Even though I had family visiting, even though everything is going well in my life, I really had a hard time meditating. I did end up meditating most days, but not to the extent and the intensity that I could before. And really, most of those 2 weeks, I was very depressed. I wasn't really depressed, but I was feeling very depressed. There's a big difference. Depression has a trajectory, and there's are external reasons for it usually. But this time around, the best way, now that I've gotten out of it, is the best way to describe it is I fell into a black pit. Black pit of, I would call it helplessness and hopelessness. Now, the thing is, when this happens, you're usually aware of what's going on. And I was struggling. I couldn't really do anything. And all those negativities that I was feeling in my subconscious kind of came up. So today I wanted to go a bit more in depth in it, just share what happened so that hopefully you will be benefit from it at some point in your practice as well. So basically yesterday actually kind of ended when I started working with what was there. I felt very negative. I could not do anything, and life was just a struggle for 2 weeks, even though I did come back from a retreat and I felt amazing and I've made the best progress I've ever made. But basically what happens quite often, if you go through practice, go deeper into your practice, these things come up. The ego pullbacks comes up. So you're making progress. Sometimes you hit the heights that you have never reached in your experience, in your practice. And then there's a pullback. And what the pullback does is you feel real wretched, you very often feel depressed. All those negative feelings that you had in your subconscious mind come to the surface. And that happened with me. I just wasn't feeling it. I just couldn't get out of it. And I did some journaling yesterday, and also I became aware that the last time it happened, though not this intense, is when I work with it and I pierce through it by creating hope and faith in myself. That's what works for me. You have to see what works for you. But basically, ego's pullback is when you make progress. Your ego, as much as it enjoys the progress, as much as it enjoys the experience, as wonderful as life is, it tries to pull you back from it. So it gives you all the negativity that it has, all those dark secrets, all those self-hatred that you might have underneath it. And I experienced a lot of self-hatred actually for whatever reason. But it just throws it back at you. So your progress goes up, and then it dips. And most people, what they do is they kind of panic. The ego sort of fools you into thinking you're going the wrong way. Nothing really works for you, and so on and so forth. So the first thing I want to talk is that ego's pullback is real. It doesn't mean that you're doing anything wrong. It doesn't mean that you're not progressing. And one of the biggest fallacies in the spiritual practice is that we think somehow that when we're progressing, we feel better. No, not at all. Quite often, the most progress you make when you feel like you're worse. My teacher was saying that the first 20 years, don't even think about whether or not you're making progress, because it's very difficult for us to understand it. Because sometimes we're making the biggest highs, And then we have the laws, and we think that we're doing something wrong. But those laws are actually progress. That's when the stuff from deep within subconscious minds, all our negativity, all our shortcomings, all our insecurities come up, and we have to deal with it. And that's actually a golden opportunity. So I would not be swayed if you feel good or feel bad in your practice or your spiritual path. It means nothing at all. Sometimes I remember going to my teacher when I started working with someone, and I would say, "Oh, I had this amazing experience. It was like a river of joy and all those things." And she would say, "Nah, it's nothing. Don't worry about it. Just focus on your breath." And there were other times that we would just walk in, and before I wouldn't sit down for my daily briefing, she would look at me and says, "Wow, you've gone deeper in your practice. I'm very happy to see that." That's before I would sit down. So I wouldn't read too much into it. And actually, I would cherish those difficult moments, because that's where you make your most progress quite often. Now, ego's pullback, the best way I can describe it is like, there was a video on YouTube about a young lady who had a feral cat and it was in a cage. And it had like 1 second or 2 second clips up every day. Every day she had a glove on and would try to feed this cat, which was feral, which means it was wild. And every single time would just harshly attack it, and I would give it a snack, and the cat would be happy, but still would snack, sort of leash out at her the next day. And it wasn't until the 30th day that she was able to really pet it. So this is like our ego. It really enjoys the progress, but it also strives to rule our lives. Our ego sees itself as the center of our lives and wants to really rule all aspects of our lives, but it feels inadequate because it is inadequate to do so. So when there is some progress, it tries to push back and keep the gravity of our lives into ourselves, because in reality, ego does not really exist, and it doesn't want to see it. It doesn't want to see that it basically a reflection of something else. It doesn't really exist. We do need the ego. Ego is a good thing to have, but it just pushes back on the progress. Just like a feral cat, you feed it, it likes being fed, it likes its new environment, it likes the roof over its head, but it will still attack you for whatever reason, because that's what it does. Now imagine enlightenment as trying to tame a tiger, a wild tiger. Just think about how long it would take. So this is basically the first point I want to make. That's what ego's pullback is. When you make progress, and quite often the more progress you make, the more harsher the pullback. So it was like 2 weeks have been hell for me. But again, I wasn't depressed, but I was feeling very depressed. It's a big difference. And all those negativities came up, and I was just questioning myself before I realized what's going on. And number two that I wanted to say is very often when you feel that way. First of all, number two is that progress, even if you don't feel good, even the laws, could very well be the best progress you're making. So I would not judge any experiences. I don't mean not to do anything to indulge in things we shouldn't and try to feel good. No, but if we genuinely do our work and we progress, sometimes that progress is the lowest laws we have ever experienced. So cherish that and work with it. As harsh as it sounds, it's one thing to be told what to do, but the other thing is to do our own work to overcome it. That's number two. And number three is when we have these harsh pullbacks, it's very easy to, how can I put it? It's very easy to be fooled by that negativity. If you're feeling very low, very down, when you question everything yourself, when you feel self-hatred, when you feel pity for yourself, when you feel hopeless and helpless, it's really hard to stay the course of what you're doing. And we have this urge, like I did, to change what I was doing. I said, okay, this isn't working. Whatever I've been doing at the center isn't working. My practice isn't working. I need to do this, X, Y, Z. But that's not the case. We just have to work the way we have done. Don't change course. Just keep doing if you're doing the proper thing, if you have the proper teaching, proper coach, just keep doing what you're doing. It's very, very, very tempting to change course and go just a completely separate way. It's very rare to say like this teacher isn't working, this center isn't working, my practice isn't working. I'm gonna go the opposite way. Yeah, some people go and take magic mushrooms, some take ayahuasca, some people go and travel, some people go on this and that, but it doesn't really, it's not the right thing to do. It really isn't. So when we are questioning ourselves and our choices the most, it's also the most important to keep the course. Because like my teacher told me previous time when I felt like that, is like, look, you're going to, if you had not gone deeper into your practice, you wouldn't feel that low at this moment in time. So the third thing is to really keep focused on what you're doing and just progress, do the same thing as you're doing. Because as my teacher said, if you had not been going deeper in your practice, you would not feel this negativity. And this negativity is just what you have to work with. Number 4 thing that I wanted to talk to you about is how to deal with it. If you feel this, if you plunge into this deep dark pit that I was for like 2 weeks, and in the past it could have lasted a few months, the way to get out of it is just see it as a gift. Yes, I know it sounds very bizarre, isn't it? But if you really are pushed into this bottomless darkness or pit of self-pity, hatred, hopelessness like I was, the way to get out of it is to work with it. Alright, this is a gift that you're given. This is your homework. You have to give it. You have to work with it. And what comes up is the stuff that you work with. So I had this deep sense of helplessness and hopelessness and self-hatred for how I have lived my life, which is nothing wrong with my life. But all this negativeness came up. And then really this sense of depression went away when I realized what it was and I managed to work with it. And I realized, because I've been journaling in the past, when this came up, I realized that to pierce through it is to create hope and faith in myself, in my practice, in who I am. So I sat down and I said, look, even if what I think is, if what comes to mind is true, if I'm truly hopeless, there are ways to get out of it. If you really focus within this life energy within 3-4 times a day at the same time for the same duration, as my teacher told me in the past, another teacher, you can find any answer that you want. There's a part of ourselves that is limitless, has all the answers, right? When a woman gives birth to a child, they don't know how to make the body parts of the baby, but within themselves they have that inherent intelligence that the body creates a new life for. So in the same sense, our higher self has all the answers. No matter how bad the situation may be, no matter how low we feel, we all have this answer within us. So when I focus on that, it kind of brings some hope and stability in my practice, in my daily life. And then I realized that's what it was. It's just basically an ego's pullback. And I was tempted to go a different way and not do this and that, but I realized that the right thing to do is just to work with it. Where negativity comes up, to deal with it, and we'll go away. And then we go back on track. We do our practice, and then at some point will be another ego's pullback, and we're gonna be falling maybe into that same sort of state of mind, negative state of mind, and it's a good thing. That's how it works. That's how we get rid of all this negativity, by working with it. I think I have mentioned in the past, there's a great book called Focusing by Eugene, I forgot the last name, but basically what it is you just focus within whatever comes up, negativity, and you deal with it, and that's the right way of doing it. So that's the 4th point that I wanted to make, is how to deal with it. You basically, whatever comes up, you have to deal with it, you work with it. You don't fight it, because if you fight it, it actually strengthens itself, and you don't change course because you were doing the right thing to be where you are, even if it feels terrible. This ego's pullback is a sign of progress. and you just work with it. So if you feel this sort of negativity, you journal with it, or you read this book called Focusing, and you really sit with it in a quiet moment and just you listen to that negativity that comes up, and how to deal with it and what it is and how it came to be really intuitively comes to you. So that's a book I would highly recommend. And just to keep progressing, when you become aware that you're not trapped in that state of mind, that it's just something we'll go through, then you know how to endure it and how to work with it. And another example I wanted to bring up about this ego's pullback, but it's not really ego's pullback, it's just pullback generally in progress, is, as I've mentioned before, many years ago I did a hot yoga with some friends. There was a new studio in town, and we used to go there regularly. We did a 30-day challenge, and then 60 and I think 90-day challenge where we would work out, go to class 6 times a week for 90 days straight. And I realized that after every 3 weeks or so, I would really have a bad class. It was a harsh class, and I was very dedicated. I would monitor my sleep, what I eat, how I eat, electrolytes. I would go to class like half an hour early, warm up, meditate before it. Still, I would have the harshest class I ever had. It was hot, unusually hot. It was hard for me to focus. I couldn't do the postures. And at one point, I almost gave up. Like, it took me literally 3 months to be able to finish a class. And that was just so hard to see these difficult classes. But before I gave up, I realized something that really changed my practice. And what I realized that every time I had that class, maybe every 3 weeks or so, right, the next class or the following class, I would have the best class that I've ever had. I mean, the best class I ever had. It was the height of my practice. So what it meant is that even when I had the worst class I've ever had since practicing yoga on those days, that was a sign of progress. I would literally hit a wall. I felt like I would literally hit a wall. It was just so hard to finish a class. But then my relationship to the experience changed when I realized that right after I would have the best class. Why? Because when I hit the wall, that means it was the wall of my practice. It was just my limitations. This is the best I could go. And my body was just feeling it because it had not gone that far in my practice, and I would almost break down. So that really changed my perspective, and whenever this happened, I would welcome it. I would be happy that I was finally reached the one bad class, and I would see it as a sign of progress, and I would just go with it. I would do my best. If I felt out of breath, I would slow down. If I couldn't finish a practice, I would sit out 1 or 2 postures and then go back to it whenever I could. And I would have a smile on my face because I realized that even the lowest lows in my practice was part of my practice. And that's where I literally made my most progress. So coming back to our topic, ego's pullback is real. It is wonderful. And it's something that we have to work with. And it's very, 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 very important to realize that what ego's pullback is, because if you don't, just saying, you know what, this isn't working out for me, I'm gonna go somewhere else, this teaching isn't working out for me, this teacher isn't working out for me, I'm just not doing right, I'm this, I'm that. It's easy to fall into that trap, right? But if we realize that we are actually doing well, we just work with whatever negativity we have, and we see it for what it is. Ego's pullback is a sign of progress, because if we didn't go deeper in our practice, we would have not this pullback. So yeah, so I'm finally out of it, and I realized that what I'm doing is correct, and I'm gonna keep working with it. And my next retreat is 25th of January. Today's the 3rd, so looking forward to it, and getting back to my practice. I hope this video will benefit you in your practice. If you have any other questions and comments, please write down in the comment section. I'll try to answer it the best I can. All right. Good luck.